Our first panel, Startup Success Stories, features 4 Lebanese entrepreneurs, Jean Nameh, Mark Haidar, Ramzi Reza, and Imad Riyashi, who have recently founded startups that are now worth in the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. Moderating this panel is Alexander Rasaili. Please welcome Alex once again.
Hi again. Sorry, it's me again. So, in the theme of the talk I just gave, I think it's important to also celebrate the Lebanese who, either here or abroad, have gone on the entrepreneurial journey and had some success doing it. And I think learning a little bit about what their journey's been, what they've done perhaps as expected, and other things that maybe didn't pan out quite as expected. So I'm going to introduce everyone, and you have to forgive me, but I hadn't met any of these guys until right now. So I'm going to ask them maybe to introduce each other. So the first is Imad Riyashi, who's the chief scientist at Essentia Analytics. It's a London-based firm that does analytics of big data and modeling and simulations. Maybe say a few things about yourself.
Hello. Hey, Alex. So our company, do you want me to say about myself or about the company?
Just a couple of words about yourself or the company, yeah.
Okay, so I come from a very analytical background, did graduate studies in AI, robotics, neuroscience, and then worked in investment banking for a couple of years. And so realized that this is not really what I want to be doing, and I was looking for challenges that were a bit different. Ended up meeting with another co-founder, and we started this company called Essentia Analytics. That's basically at the intersection of decision science and behavioral finance, creating a cloud-based software for professional investors, so basically portfolio managers, so that they can better understand the decisions that they're making, where are they doing the good decisions, what the bad decisions are, and in which context they're making these bad decisions.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Next up is Mark Haidar.
That's me.
Welcome.
Right. Thank you.
Mark is an entrepreneur. He started his first company here when he was 17, and I want to hear a bit more about that. But maybe you could say a few words about yourself, and then we can catch up on the Lebanese experiences later.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, what a spectacular event. You know, just as the job that BDL has done here is just phenomenal. The energy in the room is just spectacular. And I cannot believe just that this is the first event that's been done here. So thank you for inviting me here and just to share my experience. A little bit background about myself. I grew up here in Lebanon and in very poor neighborhoods, and went to school in a refugee camp called Ain al-Hilwa here. And I needed a way just to get by school, so I started my first company at 17. This is probably, we can talk more about it. Fast forward 6 years, got my undergrad degree here, and 2006 war erupted, and I had to get smuggled out of Lebanon to Syria, to Turkey, and then somehow got to the United States. And then I started another company there called Dialexa, and then Vinley. Probably going to talk more about it today. So,
thank you. Yeah, look forward to that. And Jean, maybe you can say a few words about yourself. Jean has started up a company based in London that does surgical technologies, and has had his company is already 40 people within 18 months. Maybe say a few things about your experiences.
Thank you. Firstly, just a second on Mark's comments. I think this is a fantastic event. So I'm a plastic surgeon by trade, and I went to med school. I was in the UK. Whilst at med school, worked with one of my colleagues to code and build something that we thought would help solve a problem. And it was a problem that we witnessed firsthand. And so I guess we didn't really start a company. We started a solution as doctors to a problem that we saw firsthand. And from that has emerged a company.
Thank you. That's great. And then lastly, Ramzi, you can say a few things about yourself. You're based in Berlin, which is even more unusual, but maybe a few words about yourself and about the company.
So yeah, I mean, I second what everyone said. It's really awesome to be here. I was born and raised in Lebanon and left to Berlin when I was 21 on my 21st birthday. Did my master's there, started doing my PhD, and at some point realized that information systems was not really for me. Too many, power suits, PowerPoint, PowerTie, and I wanted to actually do something bigger. So I founded a company called IM, and our basically vision is to understand photos and index the world's photos. We're based between Berlin and San Francisco, 55 people, and I'll be talking a little more about that later on. But yeah, totally excited to be here and to have a nice conversation.
Welcome. Well, it's great to meet you guys, fellow Lebanese, and I know there's a bunch more in the audience, who are lurking around that I know of. So I'd love to just go maybe ask a series of questions, and just to ask each of you like some of your experiences, just for the benefit of the audience, to kind of learn a little bit more, get some inspiration from your journeys and stuff. The first one is, what was the inspiration for your business, for the one you're running right now, or perhaps even the one you started when you were 17, Mark? And what was the thing that got you going? Was it just the thrill of doing your own company, or was it that you wanted to solve a specific problem?
Well, it depends on which company I started. It was like for different reason. The first company I started was basically for pure, sheer need of survival. I just needed to be able to pay my school tuition and needed to make $4,000 a year. So I used just to go and look for projects, and whatever project I get, I would just bid it for $4,000, no matter how big it is. So that was the first one, is the sheer, the need for survival. But then when you start seeing that how much you can do with limited resources when it comes to technology, because really technology is the most important asset of it is the human capital. When you started first company, I did not need a manufacturing line, I did not need employees, I didn't need any of that. It was completely dependent on my qualifications, my skills, and my keyboard and the computer. And that actually just resonated with me, saying, oh my God, I can do better. I can do bigger than that. So once I finished my degree here in computer engineering, I started realizing that the market here in Lebanon is very small, and we could not grow. I could not build a company like Microsoft or Google or Jawbone, right, in Lebanon. It's really hard. And so I said, I want to go to the United States. I want to go to Silicon Valley and just live the dream, just take the skill set to the next level. Over there, just like the inspiration or the need is just, I wanted to do something bigger. I wanted to, the dream to change the world and build the next Google, build the next Microsoft. And from there, just started a journey for some other companies.
You wanted to be disruptive more
Absolutely.
than anything.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. Jean, what about you?
I didn't really want to start a company. I'm a doctor, so I wanted to make people better. I'm a plastic surgeon, and there's a misconception in the crowd, I'm sure. It's not all cosmetic surgery. We do make people better as well. And so being a doctor, I think the primary aim was always to make patients better. And you're given a tool as a surgeon, which is a scalpel. And I guess being within a surgical system and developing expertise around that, you start understanding the problems and the constraints. And I think that's where technology can empower, provided that it's deployed in the right way. And so, we started Touch Surgery because we wanted to reach more patients. And, myself and my colleague, essentially wanted to make surgery better, and in doing so, improve patient lives out, kind of globally.
And you, in many ways, what you see is, because there are tens of thousands of other surgeons out there who are suffering through the same kind of issues, that you felt you could actually have a much bigger impact by creating a new kind of tool or capability that would then empower all of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's very important that you understand your problem. I mean, from our point of view, I was within the problem, entrenched in the problem. So I understood as a surgeon what the difficulties were within surgery. And these difficulties in healthcare in general aren't restricted to one economy or one market. These are global. And so being within a problem, understanding the problem from your own perspective, and then kind of stepping back and meeting really smart people who do design, who do engineering, you then reevaluate the problem from a different perspective. And so I think the problem is where I started.
Great, thank you. Ahmad.
So I think the thing that really ticked for me as in to start the company that I'm in now is actually that's not kind of my first experience doing startup. I had first experience I was wrapping up my graduate study, which was a dramatic failure. But
Your graduate study was a dramatic failure?
No. So as I was wrapping up my graduate studies, I was starting also a company where we had the grand vision that we wanted to solve basically climate change and kind of reverse it by coming up with some kind of B2B2C, like very convoluted problem. And so, although kind of it really did not work at all, I think the thrill that I was getting by waking up every single morning and just going there, and even as it was sinking, just kind of keeping at it, was something that I always knew I wanted to do again. And oddly enough, I did end up at the other end of the spectrum working in a very big investment bank. And I remember kind of even a week into the job, I'm like, that's not for me. It's not that I can't do it, it's just that it's not for me. And I kept going on for 2 years, and then kind of comes the point where like, you can't really, when you're trying to convince yourself why you're doing what you're doing and you can't come up with a reason, and the walk from the tube station to work, which takes 5 minutes, is taking 15 minutes on the way to work, and then 2 minutes on the way back, you kind of know that's not what I want to be doing. And so I've always wanted to build cool stuff. And the cool thing about when you're, especially in this information economy, or kind of, in my case, kind of more in intelligent systems, I want to be building super cool stuff. I want to build intelligent things. And so I was a bit also kind of taken aback from my experience in big companies on how they were designing, or even the concept of what intelligent systems are, right? So an intelligent system, or kind of what they call AI, is really usually used as a one-way out. So I put numbers in, the computer tells me something, it's either right or wrong, or kind of my numbers go in, and then the computer is telling me if I'm right or wrong. It was really kind of an open loop system for it, which I didn't really like. I'm like, we need to build something which has the experts in the middle, you know? It's like, how can you need to create some kind of synergy between both, right? And I didn't find a lot of people who shared my view on things. And then I stumbled upon, through a couple of events that I was going to, a person who's the other co-founder, who wanted to do exactly that for investment managers. They're like, we can't be doing systematic trading alone. Like, there is some added value to having humans taking decisions. We want to build something that can really help them, like enhance them. So it's more about cognitive enhancement than it is about just having a robot doing everything else.
But it sounds like you were motivated in part because you were highly unmotivated by your previous role in a bank.
Yeah.
And I think, by the way, I think that's happening to a lot of people, especially in London. And I can imagine maybe even in Lebanon as well, where there's a lot of banks. So it sounds like there was a kind of like aha moment where you're like, I got these skills, analytical skills, you cared about the environment, right? You cared about actually doing something for the planet potentially and applying these mathematical skills, and then you decided you wanted to go and break right?
I mean, the thing is, though, that when you're working in the large, I wouldn't say that I cannot say I've wasted my time kind of in 2 years working in big banks. You learn a lot of very important skills, you expand your network, you learn to become much more efficient at what you're doing. You're working with very brilliant people, but at one time, kind of, you get to this point where it's like, again, like, why am I doing this? And if it happens again and again, then most likely you should not be doing that.
Fair enough, fair enough. Ramzi, tell us a little bit about your motivations and everything. What gets you up every day?
Fear, among other things.
Good motivator.
That's not, it's a bit of fear, a bit of excitement. I think looking back, every one of us studied engineering or medicine, and if there's one thing that sort of connects Lebanon across political and religious divides, it's the holy trinity of doctor, lawyer, engineer. And for me, doctors didn't scale. That's how I saw it. My father's a doctor, and I didn't see the scale in it. I saw him just doing the same thing again and again. I mean, John is changing it now, but and lawyers seemed sad. and I was left with engineering. And if I had a choice as a creative person, I would have actually done photography. I would have done philosophy. I would have done something that is totally random, but I wasn't that privileged. I think all of us as entrepreneurs have some privilege to start with because you don't have, or you have less responsibilities. Otherwise, you can't just, throw everything to the wind. And yeah, I mean, after a few years of studying engineering and starting my PhD and researching random value chain stuff and wearing a suit and presenting to corporates, I just realized that this was like as heart-sucking, soul-sucking as I can imagine. And then I got this idea together with my co-founders of a way where we can bring photography, which is something that has always moved me, together with engineering, which is something that I was kind of good at, although, by now the team is so much better than me that I'm not allowed to code anymore. And just putting that together was it made sense. And within a day of actually coming up with the initial idea, we had all quit our jobs, started the process of founding a company, and had started building it basically. And that was 4 years ago. Still the motivation.
But where are you based?
Berlin and San Francisco.
Berlin and San Francisco.
We're basically between both places.
But you're mostly in Berlin?
I used to be mostly in Berlin, but we have actually now a team in San Francisco, so I'm I just flew back Monday. What is today, Wednesday? Yeah.
Thursday.
Thursday. I flew back on Monday evening from San Francisco, so I'm between two places.
Okay, good. Yeah, sounds familiar. Great. That's really that's fascinating. So I think there's an interesting theme that kind of appeared while you guys were talking, which speaks a little bit to the whole idea of the knowledge economy fusing with the internet, right? Which is scale, the ability to have impact at a distance on a lot of people or a lot of different industries. Maybe speak a little bit to that, and speak, a little bit to, and we can open it up. You guys, we don't have to go sequentially here, but maybe for the benefit of the audience, ways to think about scale, ways to think big, ways to think about how you can take an idea and make it accessible to a lot of people around the world who might have an interest. Potentially how you market it, or how you think about building it so that it can be used and distributed quite broadly.
I can take that.
Mark, go ahead.
Well, I'll use my personal experience and just the benefits of knowledge economy and how much you can, amount of scales you can have. One of the most recent companies I started is called Vinly, which is basically makes every car on the road smarter, safer, and more fun. And that couldn't have happened probably 6-7 years ago. If you look at just the auto industry in general, every car manufacturer had their own closed system. They have their own distribution channels. They have their own technology embedded in it. And nothing is open to the consumer. And they build things there very traditionally. They manufacture the car. They send it to consumer. And then what happens is that you're stuck with the car for 10 years while the technology outside the car is just growing on and on and on. And the whole industry was completely monopolized by just the auto industry. So I saw a huge opportunity with, smartphones, internet, machine-to-machine, Internet of Things. Like, we can do something better. Why don't you just create one platform, bring the App Store to the car, bring a way for vehicles to be smarter without depending on the auto manufacturers. And I didn't raise money, didn't have anything, just completely bootstrap this and build a device, you plug it into a car and build an app store around it, an whole ecosystem, and then the way it can spread, completely untraditionally, like the way auto manufacturer would do it. Like, you have to go to the car dealer to buy your car, and all of that. Right now, I mean, the business is completely controlled by the smartphone. You buy a device, you plug it in, you have apps, services, all of that, and completely came out of the hands of the automakers. And the scale of it, just like to put it in perspective, you have more than 1 billion cars on the road. This solution can work on every single car. And if we're successful, we could be bigger than the auto manufacturer and automaker. And all of that and we started with way less investment capital and way less people working in the company. And all of that is because of the change and transformation that's happening in recent days and the amount of scales that you can have. You can go from a small company of 2 employees to thousands in a matter of a couple of years.
No, there's a very interesting point there, which is Mark brings up, which is subtle but very important for entrepreneurs in the room who are thinking about scale, is platforms. So we talk a lot about Instagram and we talk about WhatsApp and these very successful Silicon Valley companies, but they were only feasible because they attached themselves to established widespread platforms, which were the smartphone platforms, iOS obviously and Android, which is a big deal, right? Because these platforms actually exist in more places than you might imagine, and you generally don't want to build your own platform, you want to hop on someone else's. In the case of Jawbone, one thing that a lot of people didn't realize, but which we did, was there were more Bluetooth radios than there were Wi-Fi radios in the world, starting in about 2004. A lot of people didn't know that. We knew that, and so we knew that we could develop Bluetooth devices that could attach to most phones in the world. And I think this is an interesting thing to raise, actually, for startup founders here, is think about platforms you can attach yourself. Because what Mark's talking about is a perfect example of where previously very ossified, slow-moving industries are suddenly being transformed because there's a window has been opened to developers like yours. It's great. Any Jean, Ahmad, Ramzi?
I can talk a bit about stuff more from a B2B perspective, because this is what we're doing. So the recent, not really recent, I mean, it's been happening for the last 10 years or so, but everything moving to the cloud has made also scaling up of software development for B2B businesses much easier, right? So whereas before I think you would have to implement your software, go in-house, install it in their systems and all of that, now with the platform like AWS from Amazon, even like you can have even an additional layer that makes deployment much easier, like for the tech-savvy people like Heroku and stuff. It's really easy to deploy these kind of massively. The storage in the cloud, security has evolved a lot, where it's even kind of, I would even be tempted to say that in a lot of cases, it's even safer for the company to be storing its data on these secure clouds than it is even to keep it in-house, right? So that kind of makes our life much more easier, especially if you want to be, especially as you're developing your product. So even before you have your finalized product, you can already give them a login. They can access it through the internet or through whatever app, and you can be seamlessly doing updates in the background, getting user feedback, and kind of moving your product forward. So that's, I think, one thing on the B2B business. I just wanted to add one thing that has nothing to do with B2B and about the importance of internet, just having tried it myself. Because of the far reach of the internet and the tools that are available out there, there are a lot of ways for people who have ideas or concepts to test these very quickly, right? And there are hacks around that, like even in the businesses that we're doing, whenever we were thinking about different directions we want to take. So we're like, okay, so how can we test that? Of course, you can kind of call people, you can send surveys. One other way of doing it is, say, use the Google AdWords, create kind of a dummy page, it costs you $10, put $200 on Google AdWords, or I know, like say LinkedIn advertisement, target specific people. Like with $1,000, $2,000, you can already kind of get a very good sense of what people are interested in or not interested in, just sitting behind your desk, right? And this, I think, if you really compute the return on the energy invested or even on the money invested, is much more efficient than what you could have done even a couple of years ago, right?
If your internet connection is good. Okay. Do you guys want to jump in? We can also...
Yeah, I mean, look, I know there are a lot of problems in Lebanon, but there are a lot of problems in the world. And, you know, if you look at different sectors, and if you really analyze sectors like healthcare, like energy, this isn't something that you have to travel to San Francisco to understand that there's a problem and there's a need. And so I think if you want to think about building globally scaling companies, then the first thing you have to question is, how can I make civilization better? What are the things that, you know, I struggle with? If we look at something like Uber, maybe we can get something for... if you look at something like Uber, it facilitates transport. You know, it's something that is a very, very simple solution. Technology is an enabler. The problem is, how can I get from A to B in a really simple, easy way? You didn't have to be in San Francisco to build that company. You could have been anywhere in the world. And just to add to the point on scale, I think in a knowledge-based economy, you've got two axes. And these two axes really drive scale. On one, you've got globalization, and on the other, you've got technology. And I think as technology improves, it functions as an enabler. But globalization is great because it means that, you know what? Everyone is copying everyone else. And so just copy things that work sometimes. I think sometimes those are really good ideas, and looking elsewhere for ideas is often a great place to start.
Well, globalization also means that if you have an idea that works here,
it will work everywhere else.
It's got a good chance of working anywhere else. Yeah, great point, Jean. Thank you.
I kind of disagree a little bit.
Right.
I mean, I do agree with the fact that Moore's law, very, very low barrier, entry barrier for someone building something new. Very easy to validate, lots of APIs, lots of services to plug into, so you can just build something and test it. But that is just the first step. And Uber would not have worked if it had launched anywhere but in Silicon Valley. Instagram wouldn't have worked if it had launched anywhere but Silicon Valley. And that is I think, quite essential. You can't do that out of Lebanon. You can't do that out of Berlin. You can't do that out of London. It's the very, very rare companies that actually manage to build global products on the, let's say, consumer-facing, consumer internet, consumer tech, that don't come from that region. And there's a reason for that.
Maybe that's a question for our moderator. Do you feel that you
I'm halfway between you guys, I think. So I think that I think that Skype started in London, and Skype is very unique, not only because it's obviously very widespread, but it's the only big Western consumer web company that penetrated China. Google hasn't, Twitter hasn't, Facebook hasn't, and there's a number of reasons for that. But one of the most important global consumer web brands is Skype, and it came out of London. And I think they just knew what they were doing. And I actually think in the case of Nicholas and Yanis, who started it, they had done Kazaa before it, and so they had a bit of experience. And I think they realized that you could succeed outside of America, that you didn't need the weight of an American market behind you. And I think that's a big lesson actually for people. That has been a big lesson for people in London and Europe as a whole. And I think it's also a lesson for people here. It's a mind block. People have this idea in their head, like, I can't do it because all the companies that came before me were in California. There are huge advantages to being in California, on the other hand, and that is, to your point, you have a very receptive market on the whole. You just have like 20 million people who just will try everything. The population of the Bay Area, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's probably around 10 million or something, if you include San Francisco and San Jose Peninsula and all that. Plus you add Seattle, LA, and then a bit on the East Coast. It's literally, you just got people who spend their entire days thinking about what new thing can I try. And that's what people say, early adopters. And I think that's what really helps in many ways. And there is absolute bias towards local companies out there. There's a bias in terms of business development. Google backed Uber very early on. Google Ventures did. At the same time, I also think that there's a very high quality bar. And I think that's perhaps the reason why they succeed as well,
I think in addition to that, like, Uber wouldn't succeed everywhere else in the world if it didn't solve a problem. So as a product, it works. But I think one of the things that I agree with you on is the fact that, you've got really good human capital. Like, there are really talented people in San Francisco. But it's changing there. I think really talented people are everywhere now.
I think talent is everywhere. I think what you said is actually what I was pointing at. People out there are crazy. I just heard. I came out of TechCrunch's office. I don't know if Mike's here, but the guys there were talking about this app called Nimble or Neeble or whatever. And what this app does, we're talking US, where everyone can pay with credit card. What this app does is you order money, and someone comes over and brings you cash, and takes something on the top. And I was like, you guys are insane. And they're like, no, it works. for the working mother that is carrying her baby and can't walk to the ATM, and for this and that. And what that tells me is they're willing to just put money and bet on the weirdest things and allow entrepreneurs to fail fast if they have to, or to change and build something truly global. And I think that is what we suffer from in Europe to a certain extent, is this fear of failure and is lack of imagination. And Europe is great, Germany is great for e-commerce. We build the best e-commerce services, but if you look at stuff that is new, every single entrepreneur I've met who has built something that is new, that is innovative, has had to struggle with the audience, has struggled with recruiting, with fundraising, with convincing the press to write about it. It's changing, but...
So having done it in the Valley myself, and I brought this up in the talk just a second ago, it's not easy to do in San Francisco either. There are people who will find it easier because they've got connections in the press and they get access to capital, but it's just not that easy. I mean, there is Silicon Valley, one of its great strengths is being able to cover up the litany of failures, and whereas Europe, and I'm not sure I have a view on Lebanon yet, but Europe has generally, I would say more continental Europe even than the UK, has been generally pretty good at pointing out failures. Oh God, that guy, he tried to do this thing, and there's, even if people don't say it, there's that energy in the air. And I think that funnily enough, the irony, of course, is that if you're in the Valley, people will respect you for your skills, but it's not clear that you're necessarily going to be backed forever and ever if you keep failing. But there's that impression is given. And I think what's so interesting about the stuff that was talked about earlier when it comes to what the central bank is doing and supporting accelerators here is that it's in a sense encouraging more of the country's assets to be given to experimental things. And I think perhaps maybe we can move over to sort of Lebanon-focused counseling and maybe talk a little bit about, what would you say to entrepreneurs?
So, may I just add one thing about the previous thing we were discussing? So, if you allow me just to add another point of view. So, we need, I think, to be a bit careful about the media-induced bias of what is it that we call global. I mean, great, San Francisco is great to build companies who might become one day maybe kind of a LinkedIn or Facebook or something, but that's not where a lot of that's not where the only interesting things are happening, right? I mean, Europe and the States kind of have the biggest share of the media coverage, but in emerging countries, you have a lot of interesting things that are happening as well, right? I mean, maybe kind of in rural India, like Uber wouldn't really make a killing, but you have a lot of entrepreneurs there solving problems about payments using cell phones. They're using SMSs. Fine, it's not kind of the most tech-savvy possible way, but it is solving a real problem that a billion people are having. In Kenya, you have people coming up trying to solve problems with connectivity everywhere. They have like one company called Brick, I think, is just one big ugly brick-looking router and battery incorporated just so that you can have continuous internet for 12 hours. Wherever there's a problem and you have an entrepreneurial culture, there are things to be done, right? I mean, exiting with a 50 million company is not maybe as exciting as a $50 billion company, but it is something big, and you're really making an impact there as well. That being said, I mean, coming back to the problem of, not the problem, but kind of the whole issue that we have in Lebanon, like, I think what the Banque du Liban is doing is amazing. So it's alleviating some of the pain that is coming from funding. Fine, we have problem with internet. Can someone try and come up with a solution for that? Fine, we have problem with security. For God's sake, we're entrepreneurs, can we come up with a solution for that? I mean, if there's really kind of an entrepreneurial culture, I'm saying with that funding alleviating some of the pain, I would be very keen and very interested in seeing some startups trying to address some of these issues.
Yep, but there's something, just to get into tangent for Lebanon, I think there's a good segue here, is that yes, some problems are not global. Some problems are a lot of local, but it's really super successful startups that can actually solve a global problem, or a problem that you can actually retrofit in each company, such as Uber. The challenge is not like identifying a problem or solving the problem or finding a solution for the problem. The biggest challenge is to actually find that initial traction, these initial adopters, the first 10,000 or 100,000 users that are going to give you that catalyst in order to expand globally. And that's probably the biggest thing that you can get into Silicon Valley over other, because everyone in there is an early adopter. Everyone in there is willing to try and fail. But what makes Lebanon different in here, and that's why I say in Lebanon, is that even if you solve local problem, the market is not big. But the main reason I want private Lebanese entrepreneurs to actually look on solving the global problem, because Lebanon has something that no other country has in the world. Lebanon is by definition geographically located in the Middle East, but we have 75% of our population are dispersed all over the world. Look at just the conference in here. You know, hundreds or thousands of people just came over. Even in the US, I'll be meeting with people, and I have no idea. I had no idea that you're Lebanese, you know? It's just crazy. You just you meet people, the Lebanese diaspora network is huge. And we've got to leverage that in order to solve problems. And this is why I think probably what's happening right now here with BDL Accelerate is awesome, because they solve the problem of this bootstrapping, this initial traction that you're going to get, this initial way where I was a student here. There's no way I can actually would have able to get money before. But now, if the Lebanese entrepreneur here can go and focus on solving a problem, get some initial traction in here with the support of the community in the region, and then leverage that Lebanese diaspora network out over there. This is the missing piece, I think, with the BDL Accelerate. If we can connect these 12 million Lebanese all over the world, and most of them, honestly, I'm not kidding you, if you go to the US, most of the Lebanese immigrants in there are upper middle class and up, most of them. And a lot of them are actually successful entrepreneurs. You'll be surprised. And a lot of them would actually love to help. That's why it's just a first conference for BDL Accelerate, got 1,800 people coming in. So that's, I think, the biggest missing piece that they have right now is to link
First
this
traction
local company.
is the first traction thing,
Yep.
and getting that encouragement at the beginning.
Yep. And then expanding globally. So.
Other bits, other insights of how to think about starting a company here, or
I feel like I'm always, being a little contrarian here.
good, we like it.
First of all, who cares? If you want to raise money, then you need money from smart investors. If you want to grow your product, then you need smart users to use it. The diaspora doesn't. I mean, that's always been. That's always
angel investments always. It's not smart money. Most of angel investment.
I would disagree.
Smart investment comes Series A, Series B,
this?
Series C.
The point is this: we tend to wax poetic about the Lebanese, diaspora of 9 million whatever people. I don't think they all identify with being Lebanese. I don't think they're all successful. I don't think they're all, necessarily interested. And the point is, to me, that was one of the reasons I actually left 11 years ago, was this tendency to wax poetic about that, to wax poetic about, Lebanon with the beach and the snow and Fakhreddin and God knows what, while we still don't, our history books end in, at
But that's why I left too.
Absolutely.
But
what I'm saying is this, though. I came back in March, and that was the very first time I'd come back and encountered entrepreneurs. And these people were not talking about that. They were talking about building their company. They were having the same exact problems that I was having in Berlin, that people I knew were having in the US, that people were having in London.
But the problem is
that is entrepreneurship.
There is. I think it's worth. I think. Funnily enough, I think this debate is very good, because I think what we're doing is we're exploring kind of both the fears and the cynicism that naturally arises when people go on and on and on about something that doesn't necessarily materialize. Like you said, maybe the diaspora, it doesn't feel as tangible as we would hope it would be. At the same time, I personally have benefited not from going out and be like, I'm going to go and find some diaspora people. I never did that. Maybe some people do. I didn't. But nevertheless, my first advisor for Jawbone, who basically gave me the credibility technically to go and raise money, was a guy called Pierre Khoury Yacoub. He was a professor at Stanford who'd been to AUB, and he had the credentials.
Hey, some of our greatest supporters that are surgeons in the US are Lebanese.
But nonetheless, Ramzi, I think there's something very interesting in what you're saying, which is starting a company just requires you to build a great product fundamentally and to get it out there and do the work. And it's the same kind of work whether you're doing it in Berlin or San Francisco or Beirut. Is that?
I think the reason I'm drawn to this is that it's a meritocracy, or as close to a meritocracy as things can get, which is again the antithesis of what I experienced here growing up. It was, you know, who's your father, what's your religion, what kind of car do you drive, what school do you go to, and so, you know, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter where you start your company, and I think that the environment here is as healthy as any other. And
but the question is not where you start a company. The question that we're having here is the Lebanese entrepreneurs starting their companies in Lebanon. That is the main question, because we have the advantage to start our companies in Berlin, in London, San Francisco, and Dallas. I've been here, I started my first company in here. I've seen how hard it is. It's almost impossible to start a technology company and grow it. And the main reason I'm talking about the Lebanese diaspora and BDL Accelerate is, what is the best path forward for these Lebanese entrepreneurs, or the guy who's in the first or second year of the university, who does not want to have a corporate job, who does not want to be a doctor, and want to start something in here and then grow it globally? That is the question. If you're I'm in Dallas, I don't need any Lebanese diaspora. I got my own connection, San Francisco, all of that. I don't need any of that, right? But the question is that when I was 17, when I was 18, when I was 19, if there was a Lebanese diaspora organized, someone out there in Silicon Valley would help me out, you know, and willing to do it, it would have helped me tremendously to get to UNAS. And we don't need the 9 million. We honestly don't need 100 high-quality Lebanese working together, connecting together, can link you up. You don't need to give you advice on all of that. You know? I'm probably like, if Alex wanted to help me, I'm probably 1 degree of separation from every influential person out there in the valley, right? And that's the thing. You know, get people like Alexander, like people who succeeded in there, convince them, and I think you can. I think you can convince them, and very small amount, and put a structure in place, have it coordinated with BDL Accelerate. For the first time, this did never happen. If you told me 10 years ago that the Central Bank of Lebanon is going to put $400 million to support startups, I would tell you you're crazy. There is no way that this will happen. But yes, we can be cynical, but at the same time, there is hope. There are some people like the governor of Central Bank putting money to help entrepreneurs, and there are a lot of people like Alex who would help people to actually connect it. And this is the thing we probably can focus on.
Okay, before we go on, and I think we're probably going to have to wrap up relatively soon, I think it would be interesting to touch on a couple of things. One is, as you all know, starting your companies, there's this very, very famous Donald Rumsfeld quote, which is unknown unknowns, which is basically you've got known knowns, you've got known unknowns, and then you have unknown unknowns. And unknown unknowns are basically the things that you didn't even realize you needed to know in order to do your job or succeed. And I'm actually, in the lonely moments of your startup experiences, whatever it may be, if you started here and you got frustrated, or maybe you had some success, whatever, what is one or two of the unknown unknowns that you came across that you could expose the audience to, and then how do you also, in those dark moments, sort of push through difficulties? Maybe Jean, maybe you can pipe up.
I think being from the UK, one of the first unknown unknowns of doing business in the US was sometimes people just don't understand you, and a lot of Americans don't understand what I say. No, I think managing people and inspiring people is really important. And I think you have to really find it deep within yourself to be able to really influence through a mission your team. I think one of the things that we found early on was, we're going to give you a salary. You're going to come and work in a really nice place. Why don't you just want to work really hard? And I think you really have to sell what you do and your vision externally, but also sell it internally. And so I guess for any entrepreneur who's here, you have to really believe in your mission and what you're trying to do. Because convincing other people to come and join you is really hard if you don't have any capital at all or any wages or salary to give people. And so you really have to be a great salesperson, not only to the world, but also to the people that you love and the people that want to work with you and your family as well. Telling my mother that I was going to leave surgery to build a surgical simulator wasn't very pleasant.
That's great. That's great. Ramzi, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I guess you guys have noticed I'm a bit cynical, so I went into it expecting that I'm getting rid of my social life. I'm not going to experience a lot of things. I'm going to be just working. What I didn't know back then, so I guess it's a known unknown now, was that you go into it for the passion. You go into it for loving what you do, but the only reason you stay and you grow is more like love. So it becomes hard work. It's not just, it's not just a sexy date. It's you fight and you argue and you struggle, and more than half of the time you're confused. And I think the end result is if at the end of every day you come up with one more win than a loss, that's a good day, and you just take it one step at a time. And it's a continuous learning experience. I think that is the only thing I didn't expect. I thought you do it for a couple of years, then it's big enough. It's 50 people working at the company. You stop learning and you just start going to conferences. I still feel guilty actually sitting here talking to you guys and not being at work with my team. And I didn't expect that. So that's to me the biggest unknown.
So kind of being ready for the ups and downs, for the hard work. It's not always sexy. It's not always inspiring, so on and so forth. I think that's really spot on.
But I wouldn't do it any other way.
Ahmad?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we have, actually we're having currently, is scaling up in terms of scaling up the number of team members we have while keeping up with the policy of only hiring A players, right? And the problems, the big problem that we have here is that we are in a space where we're competing also for talent with investment banks and hedge funds, and I mean, especially in London, it is very, very, very hard. And it's taking us a long time to hire these people because
what did you do?
Basically, you really need to check what is it that motivates these people. What is the thing that makes them wake up in the morning and go to work? If it is money, it's the good answer for him. It's not the good answer for us because we will never be able to compete with money now, right? So the bad thing is that it's hard to scale up. And we've already had bad experiences hiring people who were not a cultural fit to the team or who were not kind of on top of their game. On the other side, whenever you're going through hard times, being surrounded by only A players makes it just easier to go through these times, right? Because you really feel that you're all in the same boat together, and you really can be sure that no one's going to come and jump off the boat just to let you kind of drown on your own. It's kind of everyone is there together. So,
I totally agree with that. Mark, do you want to?
Well, I think probably just, we're out of time, but I think one thing a lot of people don't talk about, when you're starting a company is, in addition to solving a problem, getting traction, that it is really hard, is the emotional aspect of it. It is creating a startup is an emotional roller coaster. Yeah. At one day you feel like, okay, you're going to be the next billion-dollar company, and literally 5 hours after that, you're going to say, oh my God, I'm going to be on the street tomorrow. Yeah. And that's the thing, you're raising money. Someone is, oh my God, this Sequoia is interested. You get so excited, and they're like, and then you get an email, no, it's done. It's that emotional roller coaster and playing with your emotion day after day. I think it's, people don't talk about it much, but I think it is probably one of the hardest aspects, because I'm willing to work 16 hours a day and 20 hours a day. I'm willing to really sit in a think tank. I'm willing to spend money and think I'll solve the problem. But the aspect of playing your emotion, like being happy and sad and you're busy and all of that at the same time in really short period of time is really draining. So that's why one of the biggest things probably an entrepreneur should have, in addition to being smart and hardworking, is having this emotional stamina thing.
I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a really good debate.
Thank you.
Mark, Jean, Ahmad, Ramzi, thank you. Good luck with your companies. Thank you.